The great hall of the Galactic Conclave shimmered with pale light drawn from the core of a captured star. Thousands of species filled the tiers of the council chamber, their voices a symphony of clicks, growls, hums, and sibilant murmurs. Hollow screens suspended in the air cast shifting colors on the assembly as delegates leaned forward, eager for entertainment. For all their pomp, the gathering had the air of a carnival. The subject of their attention was a single figure standing alone at the center of the chamber floor. Kael Draven stood bare-armed, a giant among men, though to the assembled aliens he appeared crude, a barbarian thrust into a theater far beyond his understanding. His skin bore scars that told stories in silence. A broad strip of war paint cut across his face, black against pale flesh, the mark of his tribe. Across one shoulder hung a rough pelt from some earth beast, while in his right hand he rested a massive iron axe that looked primitive beside the sleek weapons holstered at the sides of the council guards. He did not bow. He did not fidget. His stillness was defiance. The chamber erupted with derision. A Saurian general with scales the color of molten bronze flicked his forked tongue and spoke, his words translated by floating drones. This is what Earth offers to the Conclave. We debate war, and they bring us a savage dressed in animal skins. A ripple of laughter spread. A gelatinous envoy quivered in amusement, its surface bubbling as it expelled a sound akin to gurgling water. A winged dignitary from the Chorix hive clicked its mandibles in mock applause. The derision gathered momentum, each alien competing to invent sharper insults, as though Kael's presence were a stage for comedy. Kael said nothing. His dark eyes scanned the tiers, not with confusion, but with the measured patience of a predator. He had been told in quiet terms what would unfold here. The Galactic Armies, coalitions of empires spanning star systems, believed Earth to be a footnote, a world of noise and primitive conflict. His task was not to persuade them with words, but to remind them, brutally and finally, that Earth was no footnote. Among the laughter rose a different voice. An elder, draped in robes that glimmered like liquid silver, spoke slowly, his tone somber. General Xylan of the Thaler Dominion, one of the few who had studied humanity's history. You laugh because you have never fought them, he said, his many eyes narrowing. I have read their chronicles. They burn themselves to ash in war, yet rise again. They fracture into factions, yet when pressed, they fight with a unity born of desperation. One warrior, such as this, is not an emblem of weakness. He is a warning. The chamber grew restless, for Xylan's words unsettled the flow of mockery. Still, the majority dismissed him. A serpentine admiral coiled around her podium and hissed. Their history is one of self-destruction. What is a warning worth when their bones scatter across their own soil? The laughter returned, though thinner now. Kael tilted his head slightly, acknowledging the Thaler's words with a faint nod. He had never spoken to the alien elder, yet he recognized the rare glint of respect. A booming voice cut across the chamber. The conclave speaker, towering in mechanized armor, raised one metallic arm to still the noise. Enough. Earth has made its petition. Their champion will stand trial by combat, as is custom. If he survives, their claim to representation is valid. If he fails, their world remains what it is, insignificant. The decision fell like a hammer, though to most it promised only spectacle. Delegates leaned back in satisfaction, anticipating the swift humiliation of a primitive. Armies whispered among themselves which detachment might be chosen to provide the entertainment. Kael remained unmoving. His silence had stretched so long it seemed as though he were incapable of speech. Yet as the speaker's decree ended, he shifted his grip on the axe and raised his head. His voice, low and edged with steel, carried clearly through the translator drones. You measure strength by machines and numbers. You will learn that strength is not measured by what you hold, but by what you endure. A hush followed. For the first time, the chamber did not erupt in laughter. The words were too simple, too raw, to be dismissed outright. Some sneered, but others frowned, unsettled in ways they could not explain. The speaker's mechanical eyes flared crimson. Your trial begins at first light on the war world of Kharon. There you will face the chosen detachment of the Galactic Armies. Until then, you are dismissed. Guards approached, but Kael did not move until they drew close enough to sense the weight of his presence. He walked without chains, without hesitation, guided from the hall. His steps echoed across the stone, fading into silence. When he had gone, the council resumed its laughter, but it was thinner now, carrying an undercurrent of unease. General Xylan remained silent, his gaze fixed on the exit where Kael had disappeared. He remembered reading of Earth's old warriors, men who fought with iron and blood against impossible odds. The others would never understand until the battle began. Far below the chamber, in quarters prepared for him, Kael rested the axe across his knees. He closed his eyes and breathed, slow and steady. He remembered the words of his people. A warrior carries not only his own strength, but the fury of those who came before. Tomorrow he would carry the fury of Earth itself. The galaxy thought it was sending a man to slaughter. It had not yet realized it had invited a storm. The war world of Kharon hung in orbit like a scarred jewel, its surface a patchwork of wastelands, shattered citadels, and twisted forests poisoned by centuries of conflict. It was the perfect stage, designed to test armies and break them, a world where every stone seemed to remember blood. To the Galactic Armies, it was another proving ground, nothing more. To Kael Draven, it was an altar where he would carve Earth's name into memory. The transports descended in thunder. From the vantage of the Conclave's observation fleet, the field was alive with movement. War machines rumbled across plains of ash, alien banners unfurled, and the air vibrated with the hum of energy weapons charging. The armies had not come in restraint. They had come to make a spectacle of annihilation. Kael stepped from his transport without ceremony. The air was thin, acrid, yet familiar in its hostility. He wore no armor save for hardened leather at his waist and shoulders, the pelt of his slain beast, and the scars of his past battles. The axe rested easily in his hand, its edge keen, its weight a promise. Around him towered alien constructs, vehicles bristling with cannons, soldiers encased in glimmering suits that seemed invulnerable to primitive steel. He studied them without fear, his silence unnerving even the guards assigned to escort him to the field center. The armies had prepared for entertainment, not combat. Banners of the Valari shimmered with living silk that pulsed in rhythm with their soldiers' hearts. The armored legions of the Droskin marched in perfect unison, each step a tremor through the ash. The Korix hive brought swarms of winged soldiers, their wings cutting the air like knives. Even the Thaler Dominion, despite General Xylan's warnings, had sent a contingent to participate, their cold precision and insult meant to prove the elder wrong. Kael's eyes moved across them all, registering every rhythm, every flaw, every arrogance. He knew he was not meant to win. They had arrayed thousands against him. But victory was not his only goal. His task was revelation. The speaker's voice carried through the battlefield, amplified by 100 drones. Trial of Earth begins. Warrior Kael Draven stand alone. Galactic armies stand united. Combat continues until one side remains. The silence before the storm stretched long enough that even the Conclave grew restless. Then, with a unified roar, the armies surged. The first wave came from the Droskin legions, their armor gleaming, their formation precise. They advanced in lines, weapons raised, intent on crushing Kael beneath their discipline. He moved to meet them, no hesitation, no thought of retreat. His first strike split a soldier from helm to breastplate, the axe carving through alloy as though it were wood. Sparks erupted, and the soldier fell screaming. The others hesitated for a breath too long, astonished at the breach. That pause cost them. Kael wove through their formation, each swing of his axe a thunderclap, each motion fueled by decades of battles where hesitation meant death. The council, watching from orbit, shifted uncomfortably. The sight of a primitive weapon cleaving advanced alloy was unsettling, though some whispered it must be luck. The laughter had not entirely died, but it no longer rang with conviction. Kael pressed forward. He seized a fallen soldier's weapon, studied its shape, then hurled it like a spear, piercing another through the chest. He returned to his axe without pause, but the act demonstrated something the council could not ignore. He adapted in the instant, grasping alien tools with instinct. Above, the Choric swarm descended, wings cutting through smoke, mandibles gnashing. They had chosen to overwhelm with speed, confident their aerial advantage would drown him. Kael shifted, rolling into the shadow of a ruined tower. The swarm closed, only to discover their prey had vanished. A breath later he burst from cover, axe arcing upward. 1, 2, 3 bodies fell before the swarm faltered, their formation broken. He seized a fallen wing, ripped it free, and hurled the body into its companions, scattering them in a spray of alien ichor. The hive mind reeled, and used to such chaos. Kael pressed the advantage, climbing the ruin with savage speed, leaping into the thick of the swarm. He was no longer man, but storm, and the swarm cracked beneath his fury. From the council chamber aboard the orbiting fleet, murmurs spread. Some still sneered, but others leaned forward, their amusement replaced by fascination. The trial had been meant as a dismissal. Instead, it was becoming a spectacle of defiance. The Volari moved next, their soldiers clad in living silk, threads that hardened to intercept blows that pulsed with alien vitality. They formed a shimmering wall. Confident Kael's crude steel could not pierce them. Kael struck once, sparks flying as the silk absorbed the impact. The Volari laughed, their mandibles clicking in triumph. Kael struck again, harder, angling the axe, testing. Thread snapped. With the third strike, the silk tore, unraveling in a burst of pale light. The soldier behind it screamed as the axe found flesh. Kael did not simply strike, he studied. Each clash was a lesson, each fallen enemy a teacher. The Volari wall faltered as he dismantled them piece by piece, exploiting weaknesses they had not believed existed. By the time the first waves lay broken, the battlefield was a graveyard of twisted metal, scattered wings, and torn banners. Kael stood at its center, chest heaving, blood streaking his skin, some his own, most not. His gaze swept the horizon where fresh troops gathered, and he lifted the axe high, letting its bloodied edge catch the light. The conclave chamber fell into silence. None laughed now. General Xylan's voice broke the stillness, though it carried only to those nearest him. You fools, you are beginning to see. On the battlefield, Kael breathed deep, feeling the weight of the armies arrayed against him. He knew this was only the beginning. They would send more, heavier, stronger. He would face machines that dwarfed towers, commanders who wielded minds like weapons. Yet his heart did not falter. The storm within him had only begun to rise, and as he stood surrounded by ruin, the Galactic Armies realized the trial would not be a spectacle of humiliation. It would be a reckoning. Smoke curled across the battlefield, drifting between broken banners and shattered machines. The ground was slick with blood, metal shards glittering like scattered stars in the ash. Kael stood among the ruin, his chest rising with heavy breaths, his axe dripping with the evidence of his defiance. Around him, silence lingered like a pause before thunder. The first waves had fallen, and yet the Galactic Armies did not withdraw. Their pride would not allow retreat. From the horizon, the ground shook. Juggernauts emerged, massive constructs of steel and plasma, their limbs reinforced with graviton plating, each step leaving craters in the scarred earth. Behind them came ranks of soldiers augmented with cybernetics, their flesh welded to machinery, eyes glowing with artificial fire. Above, formations of drones buzzed like swarms of metallic hornets, their precision flawless, their programming merciless. The council watching from orbit leaned forward as one. Here, they thought, was the inevitable end. No single warrior, no matter how fierce, could withstand the full escalation of galactic war. Kael had bloodied their pride, but now he would be ground beneath their machines. Kael rolled his shoulders, feeling the ache of wounds carved into his skin. Pain had become an old companion. He welcomed it, let it sharpen him. His eyes locked on the advancing juggernauts, and for the first time he allowed the storm inside him to rise. His heart pounded like a drum of war, every beat driving fire through his veins. He bared his teeth, and the growl that escaped him carried across the field. The juggernauts fired first. Lances of plasma carved trenches through the ground, turning ash into glass. Kael leapt aside, the heat scorching past his face, and charged. To the soldiers behind the machines, it seemed madness, one man running at a wall of unstoppable iron. Yet Kael did not slow. His axe struck the leg of the first juggernaut, sparks erupting. The steel bent, but did not break. He struck again, harder, his fury doubling the force. The third strike split the joint, and the giant machine toppled with a thunderous crash. The earth trembled. The watching council gasped. It was not possible, yet it had happened. The cybernetic infantry surged forward to shield their fallen construct, their rifles spitting fire. Kael moved among them like a whirlwind, his axe carving arcs of destruction. Blades meant for him found only air as he shifted, twisted, used their own momentum against them. His movements no longer resembled measured strikes. They were the frenzied rhythm of a berserker. Blood spattered his chest, his arms, his face, but his eyes burned with a light unbroken by exhaustion. Above, the drone swarm descended, weapons humming. Kael seized a fallen soldier, dragging the corpse into the air as a shield. Energy blasts tore it apart, but the moment's reprieve was enough. He hurled his axe skyward, a spinning wheel of iron. It smashed through the nearest drone, splitting it in two, then another before falling back in his grip. Sparks rained around him like fiery snow. The storm within him howled. He roared, and the sound was not human, not animal, but something greater, something older. The alien soldiers faltered, for no training had prepared them for the fury that radiated from this single man. They had faced armies, machines, horrors beyond imagining. Yet never had they faced raw, given flesh. The battle stretched on, wave after wave crashing against him. A psychic commander stepped forward, its mind a blade that cut into thoughts. It sought to paralyze him, to bend his will to silence. Kael staggered, clutching his head as visions tore through his mind. Illusions of failure, of earth burning, of his body broken. But the commander had erred. In reaching into Kael's mind, it had touched the abyss of fury he carried. The psychic screamed, its own mind shattering beneath the weight of his rage. Blood poured from its eyes as it collapsed, convulsing. In the council chamber, silence reigned. No jest remained. The spectacle had transformed into dread. The laughter that once mocked Earth had curdled into awe. Kael pressed on, every muscle burning, every breath laced with iron. He was more wound than flesh now, yet his fury carried him. The battlefield became his canvas, and his axe painted ruin across every line that opposed him. The second juggernaut fell, its core ripped open, flames devouring it from within. The drones scattered, their formations broken. Cybernetic warriors lay torn, their enhancements worthless before the storm. For all his savagery, there was method in his madness. He struck not merely to kill, but to unbalance, to shatter formations, to erode morale. He understood what the council did not, that victory was not only measured in bodies, but in the will to continue. And with every roar, every impossible triumph, Kael sapped the will of armies bred for perfection, but unready for chaos. The field grew quiet again, bodies smoking in heaps, machines reduced to ruin. Kael stood in the center, trembling, his chest heaving. His axe was chipped now, its edge cracked, yet it still shone with defiance. He lifted it high once more, the gesture alone enough to send ripples of unease through the soldiers who still stood at the fringes, unwilling to advance. On the orbiting ships, the counselors shifted, some whispering of retreat, others of escalation. General Xylan alone remained unmoved, his many eyes fixed on Kael. He had spoken of this moment, and now it unfolded before them. Humanity's strength was not in its numbers, nor its machines, but in its refusal to yield. Kael spat blood into the ash and tightened his grip on the axe. The storm inside him had not abated. It had only grown, demanding more, promising more. He knew the armies would not stop. They would send their champions next, their greatest, their chosen. And he would meet them. The silence held for a long moment, broken only by the crackle of fires and the groan of dying machines. Then, far across the field, banners rose anew, and the ground shook once more. Elite forces were gathering, the final measure of galactic pride. Kael's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, though it was closer to a snarl. His voice, ragged yet thunderous, carried across the ruins. Send them all. The banners of the Galactic Armies rippled like storms on the horizon. Across the battlefield, formations reassembled, but these were not common soldiers. They were champions, each chosen from their people's proudest legacies, bred and forged to embody perfection. The Conclave would allow no further humiliation. If Kael Draven were stand, he would do so against the mightiest names in their histories. First came the Valari Dual Master, her living silk hardened into crystalline blades, her movements a blur of elegance and venom. Beside her towered a Droskin warlord, a behemoth in plated armor, his hammer as tall as Kael himself, sparks leaping from its surface with every swing. The air shimmered as a Thaler psychic stepped forward, his mind radiating an aura so vast it bent the dust around him. Behind them stalked the Korix Hunter Prime, wings serrated, claws dripping with toxins that could melt steel. And at their center, an armored figure of pure machinery, the Iron Centurion, product of 1,000 species collaboration, a weapon of convergence. Kael stood alone in the ruins of broken armies, blood caked on his skin, the axe heavy yet steady in his hands. His body trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes burned as though the storm within had no end. He had already done the impossible, yet the true trial stood before him. The council leaned forward in silence, breath held across 1,000 systems. The dual master struck first, her blades singing through the air. Kael caught one strike on the haft of his axe, another grazed his arm, slicing deep. He answered with raw force, swinging wide, driving her back with sheer ferocity. She danced around him, precise and fluid, until he feigned a stumble. She lunged for the kill, and his axe met her mid-spin, shattering her silk and carving her body in two. The warlord bellowed and charged, hammer rising like a thunderbolt. The impact shattered stone, flinging Kael aside. Pain racked his ribs, but he rose before the second strike landed. He ducked beneath the swing, drove his axe into the warlord's thigh, twisted, and tore free a scream that echoed across the plain. The hammer fell again, missing by inches, the ground erupting in fire. Kael climbed the giant's frame, leaping onto his back, and drove the axe into the joint of his helm. Sparks burst, blood spilled, and the warlord collapsed like a crumbling fortress. The psychic moved next, tendrils of thought lashing at Kael's mind, trying to break his will with illusions of despair. Kael staggered, eyes clouding with visions of earth and flames, his people enslaved. The psychic pressed deeper, confident victory was near. But Kael's fury surged, burning illusions to ash. His roar shattered the intrusion, and he closed the distance and heartbeat. His axe cleaved the psychic's fragile form, scattering the mind to silence. The Hunter Prime swooped, claws raking, wings slicing the air. Kael rolled beneath the strike, his body aching from every wound. He hurled a shard of broken steel, torn from the battlefield, piercing one wing. The creature faltered, and Kael leapt, seizing its body midair. They crashed to the ground together, its claws rending his flesh even as his axe split its chest. He rose from the corpse, trembling, drenched in alien ichor, his own blood running in rivers. Only the Iron Centurion remained. The machine advanced, towering, its surface gleaming with alloy designed to resist every weapon known across the stars. Energy flared from its arms, striking Kael, flinging him across the field. His body hit stone, ribs cracking, vision swimming. For a moment he remained still, the storm flickering. The council leaned forward, believing the end had finally come. But Kael rose. Slowly, painfully, he planted the axe in the ground and used it to haul himself upright. His voice rasped through blood, yet it carried with unbroken strength. "I endure." The centurion answered with silence, its weapons charging. Kael charged as well, each step a defiance of death. The blasts tore into him, burning flesh, but he did not slow. He closed the distance, leapt, and brought the axe down with every ounce of fury left in his body. The blade struck the centurion's chest. The ground quaked. Sparks erupted, systems faltered, and the great machine staggered. Kael struck again and again until the armor split, exposing the core that pulsed like a heart of fire. With one final roar, he drove the axe through it. The centurion convulsed, lights dying, and collapsed in ruin. Silence fell across Kharon. The battlefield lay littered with bodies, machines shattered, champions fallen. Kael stood in the center, swaying, his body broken but unyielding. The axe slipped from his hand at last, but he remained upright, chest rising, eyes blazing with the remnants of a storm. In the council chamber, no one laughed. No one mocked. Fear and awe rippled through the assembly. General Xylan spoke quietly, his voice carrying weight beyond volume. "Now you know Earth." The speaker's mechanical form shifted, yet no decree came. For the first time, the conclave was silent before human. Across galaxies, the phrase began to whisper like fire through dry grass. "Send the berserker." Kael lifted his head, bloodied but unbroken, and met the unseen eyes of the council watching through their countless screens. He raised one fist, a gesture not of triumph, but of defiance. His voice was low, ragged, yet carried across the ruined field. "Remember this day. Remember Earth." Then he turned, walking from the silence of the dead, leaving his axe buried in the heart of the centurion. It was not surrender. It was promise. The storm had not ended. It had only begun.